I'm Michael. I'm a graphic designer, been here for 10 years, worked at various companies. More recently, I completed the extended typography program here at Type West. The Letterform Archive. So yeah, typography, graphic design, branding generally is like what really gets me going. And yeah, so I was really curious about this whole AI thing. So I thought I'd start with kind of a general definition of graphic design, since that's kind of what I was most curious about, is where does this fit in with what I do every day? The art or skill of combining text with pictures in like advertisements, books, magazines, etc. And that kind of combination between art and the text component, I think, is something that we saw earlier today too. How can it do that? Can it do both those things together? So that's kind of what I've been thinking a lot about as I've been playing around with these tools. So where did I start? ChatGPT, you guys are probably pretty familiar by now. And Midjourney, as we just heard, is kind of the big player when it comes to these generative models for imagery. I got sucked into Midjourney really quick. So mostly going to be talking about that. And this, if you guys are not familiar with it, it is going to generate you images kind of like you're seeing here. It's going to start off with something very fuzzy and then refine that into something which you have prompted it to generate. So again, this is maybe a lot of like basic information for you guys, but for those that are new, what kind of is in a prompt? Like he said, takes place in the chat Discord. You give it the command imagine, and then you're on your way. So here's an example of produce an abstract painting that depicts a sunset in the style of Claude Monet, featuring vivid colors and fluid brushstrokes. That would be an example of a very simple, basic prompt, one sentence. You can also add these things that they call arguments, and those have the double dash, and they're very specific kind of code elements that access different parts of the model and allow you to do some various things. You can also throw in imagery as well, so you can kind of help guide Midjourney in a direction you want by giving it reference materials, very specific reference material. Now, how much each of these components actually affect your output, that is, again, I think it gets into the black box thing. I'm not totally sure about it. If somebody knows, would love to hear more. This was the production of what we just kind of saw, of a picture of that Monet actually drew with my prompt, and then I just gave it the argument of an aspect ratio. So I think you can already see it's generating something very intriguing. So here are some basic generations that I made. And I think this is just to better understand what the model is trying to do at any moment in time. You'd probably assume that each one of these prompts involves many words with a lot of different types of descriptions. But in reality, I gave it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for the one on the left, ASDF for the middle, and 3 letter A's. So it's doing a huge amount of work, being extremely creative and filling in all those details that I left out, which I think is something kind of interesting about my experience with Midjourney. And here's that kind of 4-up that Midjourney gave to me. So I just pulled one of them. So again, a lot of variation in what Midjourney will produce for you at any moment in time, given the freedom, giving it more freedom. But these prompts can look like all kinds of things. So if you go on their website, you can look at their explore page, and prompts can be extremely specific. They can be very detailed out with tons of references and little tiny qualifiers for how much weight you want to give any individual piece of your prompt. They can be extremely natural. They could just be a sentence about warriors and an unholy temple. They can also be extremely short, like a person from a place. And they can be long and very detail-oriented with different types of brushstrokes and artistic elements and art references as well. But again, all of these things are producing very, what I would call, high-quality pieces of artwork. And so then also within Midjourney's online site, you can actually look at your generated pieces of artwork and actually click on individual components of your prompt. It will then give you a kind of a thumbnail of what it's kind of thinking that means. So you can try to dissect your own prompt and see what other people are actually doing to kind of help you sculpt what you really want to. So you can see like there's a picture of these flying cars because they added flying cars and birds. So another little tool. Also within Discord, you can give it the prompt describe, and you can throw in your own image. So this is a picture of my dog. I took it and it gave me this prompt in black. Actually threw that back into Midjourney just to see what it made. And here are the kind of its generation. So it's doing a lot of work. It's getting somewhat close, but not quite capturing my dog. So here's kind of my real first week. Again, with kind of a fear for my own job, I wanted it to make a website homepage for an influential graphic design studio specializing in typography and branding. And this immediately kind of made me feel a little more safe in what I do. This to me did not feel like what I was prompting it to make. Maybe it's a kind of like a cheese company, and again, it's producing these very embellished pieces of artwork, but not quite understanding websites and user experience and the general idea of what a website kind of is. And then I have two other pieces that are just kind of like, Walmart in the style of an artist, taco stand in the style of Pablo Picasso. And you guys can decide if you think those are good, accurate representations of those artists. Then I heard you could kind of do these like Nike shoes that are like inspired by the artist. So I started to feel like this was kind of something interesting because these kind of feel like they could be shoes. I mean, maybe the one on the far left, the Van Gogh one, is a kind of a one-off piece. But the one on the far right almost feels like a real shoe. So something interesting happening there. Next, I was just kind of looking at other kind of iconic things to kind of gravitate Midjourney to and do it in a separate style. So maybe the logo of Batman, which is extremely iconic. I'm sure everybody can kind of draw it in their brain. And Midjourney is doing some very interesting things. And I think the one on the far left is kind of what I was hoping for, was a lot of painterly strokes with the Batman logo. The one in the middle, I added a few other things. I actually think I had ChatGPT write me this prompt in the center, and it gave me this kind of painting version of it, which I thought was just very interesting and very intriguing. So again, I kind of wanted to pivot again and go back to kind of more graphic design and try to make it produce graphic design. I took a class on psychedelic posters. So I was curious, can it kind of understand what a psychedelic poster from the 60s is? And again, this produced something that I think is very visually interesting and striking, but as far as like what I was hoping for, I don't know if it truly achieved that. I do think you could work with these things as a graphic designer. You could maybe use this as general placements of copy and layout and styling. But for me personally, I was hoping for something a little more close to that 1960s kind of gritty screen print feel. So some kind of less than success in that specific use case. I tried to make it give me one of those cool profile pictures, and you can see, so I have added, this is my first time using an image prompt. So I added a picture of myself with, in the style of Alphonse Mucha, which is like an Art Nouveau illustrator painter. Some gorgeous things happening in these generations, but I don't think it quite captured me specifically. But nonetheless, I think an interesting study there. Midjourney has a feature called the blend, or the blend command. So you can just upload individual images. And so I tried to merge my face with a kind of just very graphic two-dimensional piece of artwork. And I think it was actually doing something really interesting, is just a concept of like maybe an album artwork or a poster design. But again, not quite like a fully finished product. Also, it can blend you and your dog into a kind of do a freaky good job of that. But this is kind of when I first started to get kind of results that I thought were actually interesting. They were kind of what I was hoping to get out of it. And I learned that you can go on to Midjourney's website. You can look at their explore page. They have a ton of work, endless pieces of generated artwork from their platform. and you can actually kind of use other people's prompts, or you can take pieces of people's prompts and kind of know that they're getting something very interesting out of it, and then you can add to it and modify those things to fit what you're kind of hoping for. So again, I gravitated towards another iconic kind of character, Darth Vader, but in these very different styles, which I thought was just producing these very intriguing and almost finished pieces of art. Again, like the hands of Darth Vader may be kind of messed up, and the finer details might not quite be there. But in general, I felt like it was getting almost 90 to 95% to a finished piece of artwork. Again, so this is just the same exact kind of general feeling. This is referencing almost the exact same artists, but different characters. It's doing a lot of very interesting things, producing a kind of similar look and feel across many different types of subject matter. One thing I tried to get it to do, I have a poster of Bob Dylan in my room, the one by Milton Glaser. Maybe you guys are familiar with it. And I wanted to try to see if it could get something kind of similar, maybe, but in the style of Miyazaki with clouds for hair. I kind of had this idea of what that could look like. Put it in there, was not quite getting what I wanted. And the biggest thing was it was not looking like Bob Dylan at all. So I kept adding more and more images and reference material of Bob Dylan. And what it ended up doing, as you could probably see, is it kind of made him more photorealistic than any kind of like illustrative style. But again, it's still not quite understanding Bob Dylan's face, at least to me. I mean, maybe he kind of, it's an impression of Bob Dylan, but not quite a photorealistic version of him. So just something interesting to kind of note. But I did throw my dog back into Midjourney, and I gave it kind of a similar prompt with some extra oomph on the back end to kind of really emphasize that Miyazaki feeling and that kind of anime vibe. Was getting some really cute things. You'll probably notice the picture in the middle. There's an extra kind of tail lying on the ground, kind of morbidly just like there. Also, the one on the left, she's got an extra foot kind of hanging out there in the back. So again, maybe these things, maybe it just needed to kind of do another roll and just kind of had it keep trying until those things were removed. But these are things that I think you could go to an artist or go in through Photoshop and edit out. But overall, I would take these as almost done. But those were all very interesting studies and explorations, but I thought it was time to get serious and really try to do something specific with Midjourney. And I saw this guy on Instagram, Burke.work. He's a kind of a graphic design brander. And he produced this Nike campaign. And I thought it was so fascinating because to me, it felt like it was in this uncanny valley of you do that double take of, is this real or is this fake? And I had to look through the comments to make sure, oh yeah, this was AI generated. And you may have seen that post of the Pope in the big fluffy white jacket. And I was curious, can I get Midjourney to kind of do something like that? So I gave it a shot. I made ChatGPT give me a little prompt so I could kind of stay focused on a concept, imagery of bubbles and other lighthearted elements to convey fun and energetic vibe. This needs to reflect the brand's mission, encourage movement, self-expression while staying fashionable. So I found this in Midjourney's Explorer. I kind of modified it slightly, but I thought this was an interesting concept just to see what would happen if I added a Nike shoe to this piece of artwork. I made a quick logo, animated it. Okay, now I'm on the right track, feeling inspired. This is what I got with just a prompt only. And I think it's doing a lot of really interesting things. It's kind of taking that bubble idea, it's adding it to the soul. So now we're seeing the soul is kind of see-through, and it's giving me these big kind of fluffy clouds of smoke and just being extremely creative. But for me, I was feeling like this was a little too AI art. I feel like anybody could kind of pick that out pretty quickly. And I wanted to make sure there was like a model component. So this felt like a more well-rounded campaign, much like the Burke.work a kind of reference material I was looking at. But again, to that same point, these are very gorgeous. They feel like they're in like a music video or something, but not quite getting what I wanted it to do. I wanted it to feel real. Like a real. This was shot in Portland for a true Nike campaign. So this is kind of just attempt number one in holistically. So I added an image to this prompt, and all of a sudden I was getting things that I thought were much more grounded in reality. I'm getting textures of materials. I'm getting details in the sole that are much more accurate to a real Nike shoe. I'm getting, laces on materials and colors that are much more what I was hoping to get. And again, I added images to my model component of this kind of campaign, and some gorgeous pieces of photography, or AI generated photography, but not quite what I was hoping for. This felt very high end, maybe not quite like something Nike would just kind of produce and put out there at the Nike store. Maybe this is something for a Milan Fashion Week, Nike or something like that. So attempt number 2, learned a lot, but not quite where I wanted to go. Attempt number 3 was producing some results I was really excited about. Here we're getting some very interesting kind of glass smoky effect in the back of the shoe. We're getting very accurate details within the shoe itself. And we're getting just a general kind of similar vibe across these 3 photographs. You could easily see these as potentially 3 shoes within the same line. So I thought this was really successful. I ended up pulling some imagery that was literally from Nike's website. This is like what we would call e-com imagery, which is just, imagery for commercial enterprise. But this was producing, I thought, some really interesting results, giving me really crisp Nike logos on the clothes, giving me a lot of detail within the clothes and the fabric themselves. It's again giving me those kind of added artistic elements behind the model. So this was feeling very promising. Here's kind of that campaign feel again. Also, just didn't dabble much in this, but I wanted to show this quickly. I did add a image prompt of a kind of like a pop-up shop, and with that exact same prompt, and it's giving me something that I could easily see as an additional component to this Nike campaign. Maybe this is a frame in a video or commercial, or maybe this is a kind of inspiration for a section of the store. But this is kind of, again, just to reference that, the logo and just the general vibe, this is where I kind of got to and landed on. And here is kind of the 360 picture. Again, I think we're getting that consistent look and feel. We're getting similar colors across different types of assets, different types of subject matter. Again, this feels like something you could kind of bring to your client or to Nike themselves to kind of get some general approval. So yeah, in conclusion, my key takeaway was that you can kind of use these prompts and these references much like you would art direction. You would kind of specify what the direction looks like, and then you can kind of add individual elements to the beginning of it to get kind of a holistic art direction across many different facets of your design. And focusing your prompt on a specific style or artist or specific iconic element is a great way to get a very focused representation or generation out of Midjourney. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to kind of refining those prompts and accessing some new other applications like Firefly and Colormind, and I'm open to any other recommendations. You got to prompt Midjourney with Imagine. It'll give you the prompt window. I'm going to first and foremost just copy and paste my kind of art direction component of my prompt. And then I'm going to try to get it to draw me Link. So Link's interesting because he's got an interesting name that could mean many things. So maybe like Link from The Legend of Zelda, or Link to the Past. We want Link standing, so maybe Link standing from The Link of the Past. Maybe he's got his sword too, so maybe holding the Master Sword. Yeah, let's give it a shot. That's a good question. I'm actually not sure if capitalization is red in here. So if anybody knows that, let me know. Let's run it. Actually, let's first also, aspect ratio is a huge component to getting artwork that you want. Because it's pulling from other images, things that are in a square may be a different kind of crop than you're looking for. So a kind of portrait style is going to give me something probably more likely that he's going to be standing. But since this takes some time, let's also try to run maybe a few of these. Let's throw Wind Waker in there. Maybe in the style of. Let's see what else. Maybe also let's try to pull in an image of Link and see if that's going to help us get to where we want to. So let's go Marty and Google. Let's go Link, Legend of Zelda. There we go. Let's go to images. Obviously, there's a ton of them. That looks like a pretty classic picture. You can literally just copy the image address. You don't need to do anything else to feed this. It looks like we already have our first one done. I'm just going to copy this first whole prompt. I'm going to throw it in there as well. So let's look at the kind of first generation that we're looking at, that we have done. It's actually doing a pretty good job already. I would say these are better than some of the other ones I was kind of demoing before. But based on this, maybe I like number one a lot, but I kind of want to see what else it can do with it. So has these two buttons, versions, means create me new versions based on that one, or you can upscale, which is the U. You can have it regenerate just completely, which we'll also do just to have some stuff running in the background. I'm also kind of liking this heroic pose he's got in V4, so let's just see what else it does with that. Looks like we already have some more. So this is, I think, our Wind Waker in the style of Wind Waker. So maybe it doesn't quite know that. If we wanted to probably refine that, we maybe try to give it a more like Niji mode is a anime-focused component of argument you can put, and that will access more of an anime style model. Maybe we can just throw anime in here. Let's see how that does. We'll run it again. But yeah, these are already looking pretty good. Again, we're not getting all the details that you would kind of expect, like Link's shield to be that kind of same exact shape, or the Master Sword to look truly like that sword that he's always carried. But we're getting a lot of things pretty close. Again, I still think these are some of the best ones. In these two, I'm getting actually hit the top of his hat to be correct. So I'm kind of really excited about number two. I would love to see that upscaled and see what we're getting. Maybe we'll also throw some versions, because I'm not liking this kind of dripping, like sword-like thing. I'd rather have it be more like the one on the left here. So we'll see if it can kind of replicate that. So this is kind of the fun of Midjourney. Again, this is where I quickly got sucked in, is it takes a little bit of time for these things to generate. So you're prompting like 4 or 5 things at a time, and just kind of as they come in, you can just kind of seeing what you're getting. So here's our new anime Link. I think we're already starting to get something a little more in line with what we were thinking. I wouldn't say this is quite Wind Waker. If we really wanted to go Wind Waker, maybe we would kind of adjust the prompt even more to kind of reference that specific version and that Link exists. And but I'm kind of loving this one. And I'll just like to make this kind of round this out, we'll just upscale that one so we can kind of look at it. Totally. I mean, like, so I think that, and I've talked to my other friend who's an art director, and he's been using Midjourney to actually create ideas and people and settings that don't currently exist, or maybe too hard to find a reference image of. So he was saying he needed a Japanese record collector that was wearing all denim. And to find that perfect piece of artwork, of reference material, might be kind of difficult, but he quickly generated a prompt, was able to kind of work with Midjourney for a few minutes and generated something that was closer than something he would have found otherwise digging through Pinterest or digging through Google Images. So as a reference tool, I can see this being extremely useful and valuable. Nike is probably in the forefront of making sure that they are extremely diverse in their photography. So when I put in a Nike campaign model, I'm probably getting a pretty diverse selection from the get-go. I think that would probably be my general answer. But other than that, I would say it's also very good at if you wanted a specific looking person. And this is, it's kind of an odd feeling to kind of be typing in ethnicities and things like that. Yeah. But I mean, it's something that art directors do all the time. You know, if you are looking for diversity in your photography, you're going to need to have that discussion with.
Well, and what I saw too is where you use the prompts of those images that were a specific model, then it gave you kind of images that were in that beautiful style. So if that'll definitely be my takeaway if that was like one of the success stories.
Absolutely. As soon as you throw in an image in your prompt, it's going to leverage that to a heavy degree. And I think you can probably ask it to like tone it down or tone it up with the image, but it's definitely extremely helpful. No, totally. I mean, so I think the hyperrealism component, if you are talking about maybe photorealism, the newest version of Midjourney V5, you literally just add a argument V5 to the end. It is extremely good at creating hyperrealistic fake photography. So I'm going to dabble in that even more. The next obvious thing is more graphic design work. If you did 1 million types of script lettering and have it generate a specific word for me in a script letter, have it be able to understand like type. Can I just have it place type on a page like with quotation marks or something? That seems like something that can be done with this tool. And also just a website layout. It seems over-indexed with images of artwork that it wants to take your website layout and turn it into artwork. And I feel like you could probably have it do the opposite. You could over-index on website layouts, and when you ask it to make you a website layout, it's going to be much more accurate. So yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunity, and that's what kind of freaks me out. So I think that is something that currently doesn't exist. You would probably end up, a very specific shoe, you may end up wanting to like Photoshop the foot inside the shoe or something like that. Unfortunately, these things are extremely fickle with, and they can't actually recreate a specific image that it made. It will always try to diffuse it and then recreate it from its own imagination. I just started dabbling. I've probably made like 10 different little image generations, but first impressions is it's not doing what Midjourney is doing. It's not making these incredibly embellished and deep, rich pieces of artwork. But it's probably more ethical. So I think there is something to that, right? You can make something in Firefly and know that it's not going to be infringing on copyrights or so. As a concept, I think it's only going to get better, ideally, and you can probably feel a little better about using it in your actual design process rather than making these things and then kind of being like, oh, well, I may have to take them down someday or something.